Welcome to the Trinity Columbus podcast, your weekly source for inspiration, truth, and encouragement. Get ready to dive into this week's message. We hope it will challenge your heart and change your life. Now here's Pastor Josh.
Y'all ready for a new series? Who enjoyed Joseph? Anybody enjoy the story of Joseph? I did. One of my favorite characters, yeah. So as I was looking at Joseph's story, and I kind of try to prepare my sermon stuff a year in advance, believe it or not. I really do. So in September, I'll start preparing for next year, right? And get it all laid out. And I spend a lot of prayer. I retreat away with the Lord, and I let God speak to me and lead me. And when I was prepping the Joseph series, I just felt this just natural inclination and heard the Lord speaking to me and just leading me and guiding me into this reality of, Joseph had a lot of wounds, a lot of hurts, a lot of pains. And so I started thinking about hurt and wounds and pains and things that we go through in life. And I began to write a series based on that reality that we're going to call it Scarred. And it's finding healing from life's wounds. Let me explain that to you as we dive in this morning. We've all experienced wounds in life. Anybody? I was actually talking with the staff this week, and I shared a couple of scars that I have. I'm just going to come down here in the congregation. Michaela, I'm going to work with you. You see this one right here? Can you see that on my wrist? You see that line right there? That's where a cat scratched me when I was 8 years old. I still have the scar. That one's not good enough for you? Right here on the lower part of my back, I got in a knife fight one night at a football game. I've got a scar across my back where I got cut. I used to live a rough life. Is that not good enough? Do you need me to? You have seen it, honey. I've got a scar right here on my knee where when I was a teenager, I was taking out the trash and we had broken a glass and we'd put it in the trash. And it didn't occur to anybody, and a piece of the shard of the glass stuck out. And as I was carrying the trash out, it poked me in the knee. And I carry a scar from that to this day. And scars, when we think about them, they usually carry like a negative implication, don't they? Many of us bear scars. And scars are a constant reminder of the pain or the injury that was imposed upon us. Scars are the souvenirs you bring back from the dark places you visit in life. Somebody might want to write that one down, right? Scars are the souvenirs you bring back from the dark places you visit in life. Even better, the beauty of a scar rest in the reality of resilience. Are you ready? One of my favorite bands, Switchfoot, says, scars are where the light shines through. Think about that with me for just a minute, because scars are the visible proof that you survived. I said scars are the visible proof that you made it, that you're resilient, that the enemy tried to end you, but you lived to tell the tale. You walked through a dark place and came back with a token and a testimony of God's faithfulness. Now you see where I'm going with this idea of scarred. A scar isn't a negative thing when you realize that God saw you through a thing. Come on. In this series, we're going to examine the ideas of hurt, of healing, of scars, and survivors. We're going to talk about topics like today, revenge. Next week, forgiveness. The week after that, we're going to talk in one of those series sermons about church hurt and about the bleed over of bitterness. You don't want to miss it. So we're going to be doing it for about 5 weeks. I believe God's going to speak to our hearts through it. Today, we're going to talk about how we respond when we're wounded. Isn't that a good topic? Because we all face wounds in life. And it's not whether you're wounded or not, it's how you respond to the injury inflicted upon you. Human nature wants restitution when we're wrong. Somebody say amen. And it often takes the dark form of revenge. We want someone to pay for what they did. You better believe it. You know, it's funny, when you're a pastor and you write sermons, God will sometimes make you walk through and live out what you're fixing to preach to folks. This week, I found myself for most of the week sitting up, pistol in hand, hoping they'd come back again. Somebody help me preach. Right? Just hoping. I'm like, leave the doors unlocked tonight, honey. Let them get in again. It's human nature. It's human nature. Matter of fact, did you know revenge is all throughout the Bible? It's all throughout the Bible. Matter of fact, I'll give you a couple examples real quick in case you want to look at them later. The first one is Lamech. In Genesis chapter number 4, we're going to talk about him, so go ahead and turn there. While you're turning, you might remember Simeon and Levi, two of Judah's sons. Their sister Dinah was raped, and they sought revenge. Read that story. It's in Genesis chapter number 34. Do you remember when Jacob stole Esau's blessing and birthright, and Esau was ready to come find him and kill him? Another example of revenge. Matter of fact, we could go a little bit further. Remember Samson? When the Philistines plucked out his eyes, what did he pray to God? God, avenge me of these two eyes the Philistines have taken from me. You think about revenge, we probably go back to the David series. Everybody take a deep breath. I'm not going to preach David again. If you're newer, they're laughing because we spent a whole summer in David. You say, what about David? Remember Absalom? Remember how he avenged his sister's injustice? It's all throughout Scripture. Revenge is often motivated by a mentality. Here's the points. I'm going to go and lay them out for you. Number one, a mentality that something was taken or violated. And that something demands restitution. And that revenge is a justifiable means and method to make that restitution happen. And we see this mentality and mindset on full display. And by the time we're done with Lamech and a verse in Romans, I'm going to prove to you that revenge, watch this, here's the statement, no one ever gets ahead by getting even. I'm going to prove that to you. You ready? The sense that something has been taken or violated. Something has been stolen. Lamech is the first example of revenge in the Bible. He was 4 generations removed from Enoch and about 8 generations from Adam. So very early in the Bible, we see this story. He represents the first example of revenge. Little is known as to the nature of what occurred in Lamech's life. That's okay, because how often are we vengeful and how often are we vindictive about reasons and things we don't even remember why or what happened? Did you catch that? We're angry and we're bitter and we want to get even and we don't even remember why sometimes. Matter of fact, if you look at Lamech's life, there are a couple of verses that are going to provide us a clear and concise glimpse into the mindset and mentality of humanity when it comes to hurts and wounds. And watch what Lamech says to his family. You ready? Genesis chapter number 4, verses 23 and 24. Then Lamech said to his wives, Ada, Zillah, listen up. Wives of Lamech, listen to my speech. I have killed a man for wounding me, even a young man for hurting me. If Cain shall be avenged 7-fold, then Lamech 70-fold. How many of you are familiar with the reference there to Cain? Right? Maybe I need to break it down for us. Let's start with what Lamech says. First of all, someone wounded me. Are you with me? Someone hurt me. Someone did me wrong. You see, revenge is predicated upon the reality or the idea that we've been wounded or hurt in some way. Let's start right there. We've all been wounded or hurt in life. If there's any person in this house that's never been wounded or hurt, I would like to sit down with you and hear your secret. Because human nature is selfish at best and self-seeking at most. And the scripture tells us in a verse that we're going to look at multiple times in this series, in Luke 17:1, that it is impossible but that offenses, wounds, and hurts come in life. Jesus said it's impossible. You're going to hurt people and you're going to be hurt by people. That's a part of life. If you've been wounded, you're not alone. If you're hurting this morning, you're not alone. If you're still bleeding, you're not alone. All of us have faced hurts in life. This much I know for a fact. Living amidst and amongst and in the midst of a broken and a hurting humanity means wounds and offenses are an inevitable part of our existence. As John Maxwell so described, he said, hurting people hurt people. And that's true. We've been wounded, and so often we wound others in an attempt to ease our pain. Hear what I'm saying this morning. Lamech said, hear my voice. I killed a man because he wounded me. I hurt a young man because of what he did to me. It's that idea that something has been hurt or taken. Why is it that we predicate our pain? That's the question that I want to ask this morning. Why is it that we impose and inflict pain on our fellow man? Quite simply, because we're selfish and self-centered. We seek our own desires with little thought of how our actions might affect others. Matter of fact, most wounds are the effect of another person's decision and the residual ramifications left behind by their choices. Some scars are the result of self-inflicted wounds, but most of my scars are the evidence of where someone else hurt me. Somebody say amen. As we look at this today, why do we feel the need then, if we've been hurt, to hurt someone else? Why do we feel the need? Why do we pass it on? The first step to true healing is to break the cycle of reciprocal pain. Just because someone hurt you doesn't mean you need to hurt someone else. Can I preach that this morning? That's the first mindset shift that has to take place. Just because I've been wounded doesn't mean I have a right to wound someone else. Doesn't mean I have a right to hurt. The sense that something was taken cannot be overlooked. No doubt every occasion of revenge occurs from a sense that something was violated or taken, and that something needs to be restored or made right in my life. Think about that statement. Look back at Lamech's words. Someone wounded me. Someone hurt me. Someone took something from me. They stole something from me. They mistreated me in some way. They left a wound, a hole, a void. They took something, be it my innocence, my childhood, my loved one, my trust, my marriage, my wealth, or my well-being. They took something that cannot be returned. They stole something that must be restored. They have hurt me or injusticed me in some way, and that wound won't heal on its own, so I have to do something. I'm talking about revenge this morning and how it's motivated. You're not the only one with wounds. I chose to start this sermon with Lamech and other examples of revenge because I want you to know that if you're hurting, you're not alone. If you're wounded, you're not alone. I want someone with deep wounds and scars to understand and know that you're not the only one hurting here this morning. Because you see, if you're in a dark place, and if you're considering revenge, maybe even plotting someone else's pain, you're not the only one that wrestled with that reality. Sometimes pain has a way of isolating us and making us feel like no one else knows what we're going through. Can I tell somebody this morning that if you're hurting, I've hurt too. Come on. And if you're in a dark place, thinking about things that you shouldn't be entertaining, I've been there too. And if you think getting even's the only way to numb that pain, I've been there too. You're not wicked or hateful or mean-spirited or vindictive. You're human. And as human beings, we have to often find a better way to cope with our emotions. I want to preach that to you today. Doesn't make it right that people hurt you, but neither does revenge. Neither does revenge. I just want you to know that you're not alone today before we go any further. Now, second thing about revenge. You ready? And we see it in Lamech's words again in Genesis 4:23 and 24, and it's a need for vindication or restoration. What did he say? He said, hear my voice, listen to my speech. I've killed a man because he wounded me, right? But watch this, even a young man for hurting me. In other words, I'm justified in what I did because he deserved it. I'm preaching already. He deserved it. And so we begin to justify it. But now watch what he says. He says, if Cain will be avenged 7 times, then surely Lamech 70 times. Or 77-fold. I'm sorry. What does he mean by that? Well, let's start with, first of all, there's a sense of entitlement there. There's, you owe me something. They wounded me, they hurt me, and therefore what I do in retaliation, whatever it is okay. How many of you know that's wrong? I want you to hear me this morning as I preach this. Can you hear it in his voice? Lamech is justifying his right to revenge. He killed a man for hurting him and wounding him, and that makes it okay. There's a sense of entitlement in his voice. In his mind, his crime is justified. He has to be vindicated. He deserves to be vindicated. He killed a man for wounding him. Do these two things sound equal? He cut me, so I killed him. Revenge rarely is equal. Hear me. It always escalates the pain. It always takes it to another level. Revenge doesn't resolve, it escalates. Let me say it again. Personal pain will skew our perspective. It will cause you to reciprocate and retaliate in a disproportionate measure and then justify your retaliation. You go further than they went to try to get back because your pain is personal. Are you hearing me? And so you overreact. And you deal in a way, and that can be so problematic. The need for vindication and restoration is not an ungodly thing. Matter of fact, it's very biblical that when a wrong is done, it should be made right. When we are hurt and wounded, there's an ingrained sense of justice that demands restitution in our life. It demands we be restored. There is within us a sense of fairness that demands we be made whole. There's a sense of entitlement, a need to be made whole, for the wrong to be made right. We want vindication because that is validation, right? My feelings are valid if I'm vindicated. Right? And so that's where we go with that. We need them to acknowledge their wrong and attempt to remedy the wound. You hurt me. You owe me. You did wrong by me. You should make it right. That's what would be right and fair after all. I believe that sense of justice, of right and reconciliation is a remnant of the very character of God within us. That the wrong should be made right. And let me say it this way. We were given his nature in creation, and he is just and right. Matter of fact, both the Levitical law and the New Testament demand that the followers of God make their wrongs right. Are you with me? Old Testament, you ready? You want to write them down? I'm going to give them to you. Exodus 22, 1 through 6. Leviticus 6, 2 through 5. Numbers 5, 6, and 7. Ezekiel 33, 14 through 16. Go to the New Testament, you got Luke 19, 8 and 9. Or Matthew 5:21 through 26. Every one of these occasions, the Bible demands that if a child of God does something to hurt another person, they are to make an attempt to equal and exceed making that wrong right. The real problem is not a matter of whether they deserve justice or whether they deserve to be punished. It's not a matter of whether you deserve to be made whole. You do. It's a matter of who does that right belong to? Who has the right and responsibility to administer that justice? You or God? There should be the resolution and restitution. Let me say this clearly. Christians make their wrongs right. If you've hurt another person and it comes to your mind and heart today, I challenge you to go make that right. However, as Christians, we also realize that it is not our place to take vengeance. No one, I read this verse or this quote, and I wanted to share it with you today. There are major problems when we seek restitution through revenge because no one ever got ahead by getting even. Think about that from a logical standpoint. Getting even is even. You'll never get ahead by getting even. Revenge just digs a deeper hole. Your pain makes you prejudiced. You're not an impartial judge. Just the opposite. Offense and hurt biased you and caused you to treat the other person with a disproportionate retribution. And so you go further than you should. You entreat them more harshly than you should. As Christians, we must trust that the Lord of all the earth judges right, and that it is His place and His only, and that judgment and justice will come in time. Are you following? Our heart and our heart cry out, and our hurt cry out for vindication and validation. We have to leave that in God's hands. So let's go to the New Testament. I feel like I'm giving you a lot of words on a tough subject this morning, but let's look at it right here. Bless those who persecute you. That's hard to do. I'm just going to tell you. That ain't easy. That ain't easy. Somebody say amen. Bless those and do not curse. Rejoice with those who rejoice. Weep with those who weep. Be of the same mind toward one another. Do not set your mind on high things, but associate with the humble. This is all great practical advice. Do not be wise in your own opinion, but here's where we're trying to get to. Repay no one evil for evil. How many of you see it clearly right there? Do not take revenge. Repay no one evil for evil. Have regard for good things in the sight of all men, if it's possible, as much as it depends on you. How many of you know sometimes it don't depend on you? But when it does, where it does, live peaceably with all men. Beloved, do not avenge yourselves, but rather give place for wrath. We talked about this one in the Sunday school lesson this morning with Mr. Ron. You know what that term give place for means? It means give God some space. Let it rest for a while. Let it ruminate for a while. Let God do what God does. For it is written, vengeance belongs to Trina, and she will repay. No, vengeance belongs to the Lord, and He'll repay. Some of the best advice I'd ever been given. You ready? I was in a camp meeting full of preachers, in a room full of preachers. I'll never forget it. We were in Panama City, Florida, and Duke Downs was preaching. And he said, beloved, never vindicate yourself. To do so is to rob God of the opportunity. Just like mic drop, right? That was probably, 10, 15 years ago? Stuck with me to this day. Never vindicate yourself. To do so is to rob God of the opportunity to do so. What is that saying? It's saying, vengeance is mine and I will repay. Give space and let God deal with it. How many of you know too often we are so worried about our reputation, so worried about our feelings, so worried about how we were wrong that we feel the need to make it right for ourselves. And what Paul is saying here is you don't have to make it right. Let it go and let God deal with it. I've let a lot of things go in this life. How do you do that? Because I know one that keeps a perfect record, who jots down every deed ever done in our body, whether good or bad. And we give an account. You know, there's a book of life, there's also a book of works. God keeps a record. And last I checked, his record was pretty perfect. He doesn't make mistakes. He doesn't make mistakes. I choose to let God defend me. Matter of fact, vengeance doesn't belong in my hands. My heart isn't perfect enough. My motive's not pure enough. My justice not just enough. But this is judgment, or his is. And judgment and justice belong to him, and he promises he will repay. Hear that promise, child of God. Let me give you a word. Keep yourself out of the equation. Keep your hurt and your heart out of it. Let God handle it. Let God deal with it. All right, third point. Here's why. Because revenge is deceptive. You ready? Got 4 points this morning. Here's the third one. Revenge is deceptive. What do I mean by revenge is deceptive? Well, it lies. Revenge thrives on the lie that somehow getting even with the person will make you whole. It lives on the lie that inflicting pain on someone else will somehow bring you resolution. Revenge will never bring you the healing you seek. Hurting someone else will never equal your healing. Let me say that. I know this isn't a shout and run jump message, but for somebody, Becky, I see you nodding. Somebody who needs to hear this, hurting them will not heal you. All revenge does, I'm going to get ahead of myself. Wounding them won't make you whole. Think about this with me for a second. Hurting them won't heal you. It creates another wound. Their pain won't bring you peace. Revenge never satisfies or fulfills. It promises a false and temporary peace. They say revenge is sweet. Revenge is sweet, but it's short-lived and it soon turns sour. Hear me, here's where I'm going to preach. Because what happens when you take revenge? Let me preach from personal experience and just bear with me here this morning. I've worked through a lot of things in my life. When you take revenge, you get a sense of satisfaction, a sense of resolution, a sense of restitution that feels good at first until you realize that you have now stooped to the level of the person you hate. You have taken on the attributes of the enemy. You have stooped to their level. You have become like them, and now you hate yourself for the things you've done. Now, not only have they wounded you, but you have now wounded yourself. And now you hate to live with yourself. You hate to look at yourself. You hate the person they have made you become. You have allowed them to control you, manipulate you, and use you to make you just like them. Now you're your own enemy. Now instead of hating them, you hate yourself. Think about it with me. If If you could exact revenge this morning, if you could get even, here's what you would find. You would find that no payment, no matter the price, would be sufficient to satisfy that void. And any relief would be temporary, and the whole would simply return again and again and again, even after you thought you had payment. Unresolved hurt and hate demands a higher and a higher price, and revenge gives the temporary and deceptive illusion of resolution. But with time, the hurt and the hate return, and you find that the mark keeps moving and nothing now brings resolution. It's an illusion and temporary fix. It's like treating the symptom but leaving the sickness uncured. Revenge is self-inflicted self-sabotage. Revenge makes us feel like we're justified because it's reciprocal. We didn't start this. We didn't ask for this, but here's the problem. Revenge never restores. It simply makes you the villain now. It adds a reciprocal offense. Do you hear me? It transforms us from victim to villain. It makes you just as dirty, just as guilty as the one who harmed and hurt you. It pulls us down to their level. Our loathing and hatred is simply transferred from the guilty to our own conscience. We become like the one we hate until self-loathing is our only recourse. The initial rush of triumph is quickly replaced by guilt, remorse, and the realization that hurting someone else doesn't heal our wounds. Revenge masks the momentary pain, but it does nothing to address the root cause of our suffering. That isn't healing, it's just an exchange of wounds. Do I need to say that again? Revenge is not healing, it's an exchange of wounds. Someone must break the cycle. Someone must put a stop to the pain. It trades one offense for another. It perpetrates a cycle of hurt that knows no end and brings no resolution or restoration. Hurting them won't heal you. Leviticus 19:18. Anybody know what it says? It says, love your neighbor as yourself. But what else does it say? You shall not take vengeance. Why would you shall not take vengeance be included with love your neighbor as yourself? Because vengeance is nothing more but masked hatred for your own hurt. Are you hearing me, church? It's you hate the pain, and so it manifests as a need to get even. But all you're doing is hurting yourself deeper and deeper. Look at 1 Peter 3:8-9. I'll just give you a couple references as I bring the final point. Finally, all of you, be of one mind, having compassion for one another. Love as brothers. Be tenderhearted. Be courteous. Do not return evil for evil or reviling for reviling, but on the contrary, blessing. When someone's bad to you, bless them. When they treat you bad, love them. When they do wrong by you, look past it, knowing that you were called to this so that you can inherit a blessing. The way to unlocking God's blessing in your life is to forgive. Oh, I know, I'm preaching now, right? You will never overcome evil with more evil. I know it's the topic, but let's preach it today. This is good. You will never overcome evil with more evil. It doesn't work that way. Medical science and clinical psychology are finally confirming what Scripture has taught us all along. You will never overcome evil with evil. Look to these references. And as we do, think about the meaning of the word overcome. What do you mean by that? Overcome evil with our good. Watch this one in 1 Thessalonians 5:15. See that no one renders evil for evil to anyone, but always pursue what is good for yourselves and for all. If you want to overcome, if you want to be victorious, if you want to walk in health and wholeness, you must learn to let go of the need to get even. When you want to get even, choose instead to get over it. Let it go. Don't let them make you a perpetual victim. What do I mean by that? Michelle, it's one thing for them to hurt me once. It's another thing for me to let them hurt me every day of my life. Is somebody hearing this, Pastor? I said, put aside the need to be their perpetual victim by making yourself a monster. Make myself a monster? What do you think revenge does? It transforms you from victim to villain until you now hate yourself. And that wound is perpetual. I can live with what they did to me. I can't live with the things I do to myself. Let me finish. They chose to hurt me, but I control whether that injury was once or a daily occurrence. I love the words of Martin Luther King Jr. I've decided to stick to love because hate is too great a burden to bear. This may even be a better one. You ready? There's no revenge so complete as forgiveness. That was Josh Billings. What is he saying? No greater revenge could I ever imagine against the person that hurt me than to go on and live my life like nothing happened. Isn't that good? So what do we do, Pastor? How do we do what you're preaching? You've proven that revenge doesn't work. You've shown us that it's going to make us loathe ourselves. You've taught us that we aren't going to get ahead by getting even. So what do we do? Well, I know this isn't easy, but this is the answer. You have to leave it in God's hands. Think about it. You ready? Kason, go ahead and come. Think about it like this. Okay, can I have a volunteer? It doesn't matter. Jay, come here. Come here, buddy. Come here. Put your phone down. You don't need that. You're taking notes. I'm glad you are. You could put notes, pause. Dad embarrassed me in front of everyone. All right. Here's what revenge does. Jay hurt me. Jay mistreated me. Jay was mean to me. Jay gave me a wound. But I'm looking to Jay to make me whole. I'm looking to Jay to be my healing. I'm looking to Jay, who hurt me, who wronged me, who mistreated me, to somehow all of a sudden sew up the wound that he left in my life. I'm looking to him, the one that wounded me, the one that hurt me, the one that mistreated me, the one that took my innocence when I was 7. I'm preaching to somebody this morning. I'm all of a sudden looking to him to make me whole, to fix me. That's what revenge does. It thinks that somehow if I can hurt him back, I will somehow be made whole by the one that hurt me. Friend, thank you, Jay. Do you see that? Do you understand that? I'm trying to preach to you. You got to put it in God's hands because God is your source. God's the only one that'll ever make you whole. God's the only one that can give you healing. God's the only one that can take away the pain. God's the only one that can make it right. If you're looking to revenge, you're looking to the wrong person to bring your healing. You're looking to the wrong person. Stop letting them have influence over your life. What makes you think the one that was the source of your heartache and hurt will now bring you happiness? The likelihood is that they will only be a source of more pain. Let God be your source. How do I do that, Pastor? Forgive and trust Him for the healing and wholeness you seek. Don't let it become dependent on them. Let it become dependent on what they do or don't do, what they say or don't say, what they make right or don't make right. Take the control, the authority out of their hands and put it in the hands of the one that judges the earth right. I know it took us a while to get here, but this is what I came to preach. Stand with me this morning. I challenge you to leave it in God's hands, whatever it is. I know I alluded to Romans 12 earlier, but let me look at it one more time. If it's possible, as much as depends on you, live peaceably with all men. Don't avenge yourself, but rather give God space. Let His wrath work, because what goes around comes around. Right? Do not be deceived. Do not be deceived. God is not. Whatever a man sows, he's going to reap. He's going to reap. And if you really want to go a step further, get to the place in your life where your heart is so pure you don't need them to hurt. I mean, it's good to go, God will get them. But can you get to the place that you go, I don't even want God to get them? I'm not quite there yet. It's still fresh. But you can get there. The secret to maintaining peace in your life is to forego revenge and let the hate go. You want to live at peace with all men and yourself? Let go of the need to get even and be at peace. Instead, give place to wrath. What does that mean? Give God space and a season to deal with it, because everything comes clean on wash day. Shift the responsibility. God, this isn't my problem anymore. It's yours. I'm giving it to you to deal with. And God can deal with it if He so chooses and when He so chooses. There's an indescribable liberty when you actually release it and let God deal with it. When you put it in God's hands. And that's what I'm about to challenge someone to do today. I've been watching the congregation as I've been preaching, and I've seen tears flow. I've seen grieving hearts take deep breaths. I've seen nods of affirmation that let me know that there are still people in this house who are carrying around some wounds. Give it to Him. When Jesus said, "Come to me, all you that are weary and weighed down, heavy laden," in Matthew 11:28, when He said, "Take my yoke upon you, for it is easy and my burden is light," He was inviting you into a partnership. He was inviting you to share your weights and worries with Him. Matter of fact, He says, "Cast all your cares upon Him, for He careth for you." Are you with me? When God said, "Take my yoke upon you, for my burden is easy, my yoke is easy, my burden is light," what He was saying is, give me your problems and let me give you my peace. If you're heavy laden, if you're weary from carrying around a need to be restored from the person that hurt you, and you've carried that weight of injustice, and you've carried that weight of a lack of reconciliation, and you've carried that weight of will they ever make it right? I'm challenging you right now, bring it to the altar and lay it down. Let it go. Can you do that today? Can you let it go? Can you hand it to God and walk out of this house with newfound freedom? That's the question. Relinquish the faulty idea that anyone or anything other than God will make you whole, and trust Him to bring healing in your life today. I said it again, the Lord of all the earth judges right. Give Him space and place to do it. Put it in His hands and walk away in the freedom that only a full release can grant. Let go of the need to get even and let God carry that weight from this day forward. Are you with me? Who's that for? Would you step out from where you are? Make your way forward in a symbolic gesture to
Thank you for listening. We hope you were inspired by this week's message. Be sure to subscribe to this podcast to stay connected and receive the latest messages from Trinity Columbus. For church information, upcoming events, or to partner financially, visit our website at trinitycolumbus.com. If you'd like to join us live or in person, Sunday service begins at 11 a.m. Stay connected, stay encouraged. Until next time.